Hi, my name's Hannah. You may know me from my Armstrong's YouTube channel. I am his girlfriend. I am the brains of the business, obviously.
The air in the workshop is thick with the smell of grinding metal and 99-octane fuel. But today, something feels different. Matt Armstrong stands frozen, camera rolling, staring at a garage door that's about to reveal a secret he wasn't prepared for. He thought he was the only one with a big plan this year, but the silhouette under the silk cover tells a different story. The master just got served, and the student/girlfriend, she's officially taken over. The girlfriend stealing the show. Since day one, the hierarchy in the Armstrong workshop was as solid as a roll cage. Matt was the visionary with the angle grinder, and Hannah was the supportive partner, often seen rolling her eyes at the latest financial disaster Matt had dragged home on a trailer. But while Matt was busy chasing the high of another unfixable salvage, a big plan, a quiet transformation was happening in the shadows of the garage. It started with small things, Hannah helping to bleed brakes or holding a flashlight, but the student was taking notes. Fast forward to the moment that literally stopped the shop in its tracks, Hannah's secret build. One of the biggest plans Matt had wasn't just a car, it was a lifestyle of being the sole provider of automotive miracles. He was the one who saved the Audi TT, the one who resurrected the Bentley, and the one who built the unbuildable hypercars.
My Bentley Continental GT that we bought and rebuilt it on my driveway.
He was so comfortable in his role as the master that he didn't notice the tarp-covered shape in the corner of the workshop growing more refined every day. He assumed Hannah was just helping with the business, managing the merch or filming B-roll. He didn't realize she was building a rival empire, both mechanically and digitally. The shutdown wasn't a shouting match or a legal battle, it was a pure, cold mechanical flex. While Matt was struggling with a flooded supercar engine that refused to turn over, Hannah finally pulled the cover off her own project. It wasn't a girlfriend car painted in pastel colors. It was a masterpiece of engineering that defied Matt's chaotic bash it till it fits philosophy. It was clean, it was precise, and most importantly, it worked. When she fired up the engine, the roar didn't just rattle the workshop windows. It rattled Matt's ego. He was standing there with grease on his face and a broken sensor in his hand, looking at a car that was objectively better built than his current project. This was the moment the limelight shifted. The camera, which usually followed Matt's every move, began to pivot. The comments section, once filled with fans asking, "When is the next Matt build?" started asking, "Can we see more of Hannah's engine swap?" The viewer retention spikes weren't happening during Matt's technical explanations anymore. They were happening when Hannah took the wheel. She had successfully hijacked the narrative. She wasn't just the supporting cast anymore. She had become the main character in a story Matt thought he was writing alone. For a guy like Matt, who thrives on being the one to beat the odds, being beaten by his own apprentice in his own shop was a reality check he wasn't ready for. He had spent years teaching her the ropes, giving her the tools, and encouraging her to get stuck in, never imagining that she would actually surpass him. The revenge was sweet because it was earned. She didn't just steal the spotlight, she built a better light. She proved that while Matt was the king of salvage, she was the queen of the finished product. The dynamic of the channel changed overnight. It wasn't just the Matt Armstrong show featuring his girlfriend. It was now a workshop divided. The competitive tension was obvious. Every time Matt tried to one-up her with a more expensive part or a flashier paint job, Hannah would counter with a bit of clever engineering that cost half the price and worked twice as well. She had effectively interrupted his plan of being the sole automotive authority in the household. He wasn't the only one people were coming to see anymore. And for a creator who built his brand on being the best, that was a tough pill to swallow. The irony, of course, is that Matt had created his own monster. By being such a good mentor and including her in every step of his journey, he had given her the ultimate roadmap to success. He showed her the mistakes so she didn't have to make them. He showed her the shortcuts so she could find better ones. And when she finally stepped out from behind the camera to claim her spot on the workshop floor, he realized his biggest plan to build an unstoppable brand had succeeded, just not in the way he expected. He thought he was building a car empire. He didn't realize he was building his biggest competitor. But as the subscriber counts on both their channels began to skyrocket, a new question started to emerge in the workshop. Was this rivalry going to tear the shop apart, or was it the secret sauce that would take them both to the next level? While the rivalry made for incredible drama on screen, what was actually happening behind the scenes when the cameras stopped rolling? 2 channels, 1 garage. While the narrative of a workshop divided makes for a gripping headline, the reality behind the scenes is even more impressive. A masterclass in modern digital branding. You see, in the world of content creation, competition isn't always a zero-sum game. For Matt and Hannah, the rivalry didn't lead to a fallout. It led to a massive expansion of their shared empire. Instead of one channel fighting for a slice of the pie, they simply baked a much bigger pie. Hannah's growth hasn't been a fluke or a side effect of Matt's fame. It was a strategic, organic evolution. She moved from the person holding the camera to a fully fledged creator with her own dedicated audience. Her channel, which now boasts over 36,000 subscribers and millions of views, offers something Matt's high-octane, let's grind this until it fits energy sometimes misses.
So, I'm starting a channel. A lot of you have requested this.
The grounded, relatable perspective of someone actually living the chaos. While Matt is showing you the 0 to 60 times and the roar of a twin-turbo Lamborghini, Hannah is showing you the reality of living in a house that's essentially a glorified parts warehouse. This dual-channel approach created a symbiotic loop. Fans would watch Matt's main channel to see a wrecked supercar get resurrected, but then they'd immediately hop over to Hannah's channel to see the behind-the-scenes reality, the late-night stress, the literal mess, and the mechanical hurdles that Matt might gloss over in his fast-paced edits. By stealing the limelight, Hannah didn't diminish Matt's brand. She humanized it. She gave the audience a second entry point into their world. Factual business records even show that this isn't just a hobby for Hannah. She is listed as a director in Matt's core companies, including Matt Armstrong Ltd. and MA Merchandise. This tells you everything you need to know about the shutdown. Behind the apprentice's revenge is a highly organized business partner who ensures the empire keeps running while Matt is out chasing the next salvage auction. They've built a structure where competition is just another word for collaboration. The growth stats for both channels in 2025 and 2026 show a clear trend. When they work together on a project, or better yet, when they compete, the engagement through the roof. The competition for views is actually a shared victory. Matt's main channel has hit over 6.3 million subscribers, fueled in part by the Hannah dynamic that adds tension and humor to his builds. Meanwhile, Hannah's own automotive projects like her work on the Audi RS5 and the Land Rover Defender have proven she can pull her own weight in the workshop. In a way, Hannah shutting down Matt's biggest plan was the best thing that ever happened to his career. It forced him to share the stage, which in turn made the stage twice as large. They aren't just two YouTubers dating, they are a multimedia production house where the master and the apprentice have become equals. Matt might have been the one to teach Hannah how to turn a wrench, but she's the one who taught him that two creators are always stronger than one. But to truly understand why Matt was so willing to let Hannah take the wheel, you have to look back at the years of sweat, broken bones, and failed business ventures that shaped the man who built the empire from absolute zero. From dirt jumps to dream cars. For Matt, the workshop isn't just a place of business, it's his sanctuary, his classroom, and the stage for a comeback story 10 years in the making. Long before the multi-million-pound Bugatti projects and the glossy thumbnails, Matt's life was defined by two things: adrenaline and gravity. Born in Leicester in 1993, Matt didn't grow up with a silver wrench in his hand. He grew up with a BMX between his knees. For most of his late teens and early 20s, Matt wasn't eyeing salvaged supercars. He was eyeing the next 15-foot vertical drop. As a professional BMX rider, Matt traveled the world, competing in events from the dusty parks of Dubai to the elite ramps of Germany. This period of his life was the ultimate training ground for what would become his YouTube superpower, his tolerance for risk. In BMX, if you hesitate, you crash. If you don't commit to the trick, you end up in a hospital bed. That same all-in mentality is exactly what allowed him to later walk into salvage auctions and bid tens of thousands of pounds on cars that professional mechanics called parts only. He wasn't afraid of a wreck because he had been one himself, recovering from the brutal physical toll that professional extreme sports takes on a body. However, the transition from professional athlete to professional resurrector wasn't a smooth ride. When the BMX career began to wind down, partly due to the sheer physical demand and the lack of long-term financial security, Matt found himself at a crossroads. He was a self-taught mechanic who had learned the basics by watching his father, Tony, in the family garage. But knowing how to fix a dent is a long way from knowing how to rebuild a Maserati. Matt spent years grinding in the most literal sense, delivering food, bartending, and working in automotive retail. He was the definition of a hustler, trying to find a way to turn his mechanical curiosity into a sustainable life. The turning point, the big bang of the Armstrong empire, didn't happen in a boardroom. It happened in a heap of twisted metal. In 2018, Matt bought a crashed Audi TMK2. At the time, it wasn't a content strategy. It was just a guy trying to build a nice car for his girlfriend Hannah on a budget.
My God!
Car's back, and it's literally pulling all over the place, because of that.
But as he started filming the process on his old BMX channel, something strange happened. People stopped asking for tail whips and started asking about torque specs. They were hooked on the honesty of the build. Matt wasn't pretending to be a master technician. He was a guy in a driveway with a basic set of tools, a lot of grit, and a camera. That Audi TT was the catalyst that changed everything. It proved that there was a massive, underserved audience of people who didn't want to see a car being polished in a clean room. They wanted to see it being saved from the crusher. Matt realized that the salvage niche was the ultimate storytelling engine. Every car had a tragedy, and he was the one writing the happy ending. He pivoted his entire brand, moving away from the ramps and into the scrap yards. He began investing every penny he made from his side jobs into the next unfixable wreck. The rise was meteoric, but it was built on a foundation of genuine mechanical struggle. Matt's secret sauce was his transparency. If he snapped a bolt, he showed it. If he spent 5,000 pounds on a part that didn't fit, he showed the frustration. This vulnerability made his eventual success feel like a win for the viewers, too. By the time 2020 rolled around, the world was stuck indoors, and Matt was in his garage, providing the ultimate escapade. He wasn't just fixing cars. He was proving that with enough Armstrong grit, you could take something the world had discarded and make it beautiful again. But as the projects grew from Audis to Bentleys, and from Bentleys to Lamborghinis, the stakes became astronomical. Matt was no longer just a guy in a driveway. He was a high-stakes gambler playing a game where a single mistake could cost him his entire business. He had reached the pinnacle of the salvage world, becoming the scrap metal king of YouTube. He had the houses, the dream garage, and a fleet of cars that would make a billionaire jealous. He was at the top of his game, seemingly untouchable. But what happens when the king of the salvage yard finally meets a car that even he can't tame? Or worse, a project that threatens to bankrupt the very empire he spent a decade building. The scrap metal king, the impossible salvages. By 2024, Matt wasn't just a YouTuber. He was a one-man rescue mission for the world's most abused machinery. He had built a reputation on the impossible, taking cars that insurance companies had literally deleted from their systems and dragging them back into the land of the living. His portfolio isn't just a list of cars, it's a graveyard that he turned into a showroom. Take the Marcus Rashford Rolls-Royce Wraith. This wasn't just any salvage, it was a cultural moment. The Manchester United star had crashed his 700,000-pound custom Mansory edition.
Marcus Rashford's car. No way, Rashford had crashed his car and taken the lamppost out completely.
leaving it a crumpled heap of carbon fiber and high-end leather. Most people saw a tragedy. Matt saw a thumbnail. He bought the wreck for $184,000, a staggering gamble considering the cost of Rolls-Royce parts, and began a rebuild that would define his Scrap Metal King title. The project was a nightmare of engineering. He had to source parts from another YouTuber, Tavarish, and navigate the complex electronics that make a Rolls-Royce more of a rolling supercomputer than a car. But the real boss-level moment came when Mansory themselves got wind of the build. They didn't send a cease and desist. They asked for the car back. Matt drove the rebuilt beast all the way to their factory in Germany, where the legendary tuners jokingly critiqued his DIY work before helping him dial in the suspension and wheels. It was the ultimate validation. The people who built the car, Osodio Bakar originally, were now shaking hands with the guy who saved it in a shed. Then there was the Mr. Beast Lamborghini. When the world's biggest YouTuber needed a car resurrected, he didn't call a certified dealership. He called the guy from Leicester with the angle grinder. Matt took on a Lamborghini Huracan that had been through the ringer, documenting a rebuild that saw him literally cutting the car in half to repair the frame. This was Matt at his most raw, covered in dust, fighting with wire harnesses and proving that no amount of structural damage could stop a determined mind. He transformed a parts-only carcass into a twin-turbo, 1,000 horsepower weapon. It was the kind of project that made other creators realize that Matt was playing a completely different game. But even those projects paled in comparison to the Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport. This is where the legend of the Scrap Metal King met its greatest challenge, and where the shutdown narrative began to bleed into his professional life. The car, one of only 60 in existence, was a $6 million masterpiece that had been totaled in Miami. Bugatti, a brand known for its obsessive control over its image, did something they rarely do. They blacklisted the car. They locked the VIN, refused to sell parts, and essentially told Matt that the car was dead. Bugatti quoted a factory repair at $1.7 million, a number that would bankrupt most human beings. Matt's response? He flew to Miami anyway. He poked, prodded, and began a guerrilla rebuild that involved 3D printing custom parts and TIG welding components that Bugatti insisted could only be replaced. This wasn't just a car build. It was a war against the authorized dealer monopoly. He was fighting for the right to repair on a global stage. The Chiron became a symbol of his defiance. Even as Bugatti CEO Mate Rimac publicly raised safety concerns, Matt pressed on, proving that a dedicated builder with a TIG welder could do what a billion-dollar corporation said was impossible. His success with the Ferrari 296 GTB and the 812 Superfast further solidified his reign. These cars were smart wrecks filled with hybrid batteries and pyro fuses designed to stay dead after a crash. Matt and his team, including his father Tony and his lead mechanic Liam, spent 24-hour marathons bypassing ECU locks and tricking the Ferraris back into life. He was doing digital surgery on cars that were meant to be scrapped. Every one of these wins added another brick to the fortress of Matt's ego, a fortress that was eventually bypassed by the person he least expected. He had spent years being the hero of the story, the man who could fix anything. He had survived the wrath of Bugatti, the complexity of Ferrari, and the skepticism of the entire automotive industry. He was the undisputed king of the salvage auction. But as the piles of scrapped carbon fiber grew higher and the views climbed into the hundreds of millions, Matt made one critical mistake. He forgot that he wasn't the only one learning how to turn a wreck into a masterpiece. The court of public opinion. In the digital coliseum, the audience isn't just watching a repair. They are the judge, jury, and sometimes the executioner. The public response to Matt's recent trajectory and Hannah's increasing prominence has revealed a community that is deeply divided between pure entertainment and engineering ethics. On one side of the digital fence, you have the die-hard Armstrong army. To these millions of subscribers, Matt is a working-class hero who has democratized hypercar ownership. They see his move toward more extreme salvages, like the Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport, as a refreshing middle finger to the quiet wealth and gatekeeping nature of elite car brands. For this faction, Hannah's growing role is a vital part of the channel's evolution. They don't see her ruining him down as a negative. They see it as a necessary grounding force. Many fans have praised the shift toward a power couple dynamic, noting that Hannah's more meticulous approach to projects, like her solo work on a Land Rover Defender, provides a perfect contrast to Matt's bash-it-till-it-fits energy. However, as Matt's projects have scaled from Audi TTs to blacklisted Bugattis, a vocal group of critics and purists has emerged. On platforms like Reddit, the conversation has taken a sharper tone, with some users comparing Matt's high-risk repairs to the ill-fated OceanGate expedition. These critics argue that ignoring manufacturer warnings about carbon fiber structural integrity isn't just content, it's dangerous hubris. They question whether the public should be shaming creators who put structurally compromised 250 miles per hour vehicles back on the road for the sake of clicks. For these skeptics, the idea of Hannah shutting down one of Matt's more reckless plans isn't a clickbait plot point. It's a desperate hope for a safety intervention. Adding to the friction is a growing sentiment that Matt has become too commercial. Some long-term viewers have expressed nostalgia for his early, honest content, criticizing the tone-deaf shift toward flexing multi-million-pound houses and custom-built garages, while the average UK viewer is struggling with the cost of living. The comment sections, once filled with genuine mechanical advice, are now frequently dismissed by critics as being full of meat-riding bots who offer unconditional praise regardless of the build quality. While Matt represents the boundary-pushing and occasionally polarizing ambition of the brand, Hannah is often seen as the relatable partner who still finds the chaos absurd. Her channel, focusing more on the real side of their lives, has garnered its own loyal following from people who find Matt's main channel antics slightly too polished or profit-driven. Whether the public is cheering for her to take the lead or begging her to act as the shop's safety officer, one thing is clear: the audience is no longer just watching Matt Armstrong. They are watching a partnership where the apprentice might just be the most respected person in the building. But as the fans debate the safety and ethics of these builds, a much more technical war is brewing, not in the comment section, but in the car's very code. The right to repair war. While the public was busy dissecting the workshop drama, Matt Armstrong was hitting a much more literal wall. The biggest plan of 2026 wasn't just to fix another car, it was to prove that you can truly own a modern hypercar. In the past, a mechanic with enough grit and a welder could fix anything. Today, as Matt discovered with his Ferrari 296 GTB and the Bugatti Chiron, the most powerful tool in the shop isn't a spanner, it's a laptop. The shutdown Matt faced wasn't just from Hannah, it was from the manufacturers themselves. Ferrari and Bugatti have led a quiet war against independent builders by implementing VIN locks and software kill switches. When Matt finished the mechanical repair on his Ferrari 296, the car was effectively a $300,000 paperweight. Despite the hardware being perfect, the dashboard flashed a hybrid system failure, a software lockout that can often only be cleared by a factory-authorized dealer. This highlighted a terrifying new reality in the salvage world. You can buy the metal, but you don't necessarily own the permission to start the engine. The Bugatti Chiron saga took this to a global scale.
What we're going to do, we're going to put this as well in a case, and then we're going to see if it is actually weldable, so we also have plan B.
Bugatti CEO mate Rimac publicly challenged Matt's rebuild, claiming that splitting the Chiron chassis required proprietary equipment found in only 2 facilities worldwide. Matt's response, using a trash can trolley and a basic set of tools to successfully split the car, became a viral symbol of the right to repair movement. It stripped away the myth of impossible factory engineering, showing that while these cars are complex, they still follow the basic principles of physics. However, the victory was bittersweet. Bugatti's refusal to sell parts or support the build left Matt in a legal and technical gray area, forcing him to turn to 3D printing and custom fabrication just to keep the project alive. This struggle has turned Matt into an accidental advocate. By documenting the dealer-only resets and encrypted battery management systems, he has exposed the trend of manufacturers shifting from selling a product to selling a service agreement. The question for the 2026 car community has become, if everything must be connected for ignition approval, does the owner truly control the vehicle? The final salvage. The question hanging in the Leicester air isn't about what Matt has already built. It's about where the trajectory of the scrap metal king goes from here. In 2026, Matt Armstrong is no longer just a YouTuber. He has become a brand that transcends the platform. But as every builder knows, the higher you stack the bricks, the more stable the foundation needs to be. For Matt and Hannah, the future isn't just about bigger turbos and more expensive wrecks. It's about a total evolution of the automotive media landscape. The most immediate shift in the Armstrong future is the transition from DIY salvage to bespoke engineering. We are already seeing the early stages of this transition. Matt is moving away from simply fixing cars to original factory specifications and moving toward creating Armstrong editions. This involves taking a total loss, something the manufacturer has abandoned, and re-engineering it with modern technology, custom wide-body kits, and performance maps that the original factories would never dare to release. By 2027, it's highly likely we will see a dedicated MA Performance facility, a place where salvaged supercars aren't just repaired, but reimagined. This would turn his biggest plan into a legitimate boutique car brand, effectively making him the Mansory of the salvage world. The future of the channel is clearly a dual narrative. We are looking at a top gear for the digital age, but instead of three middle-aged men bickering, it's a high-stakes power couple competing for the better build. Hannah's channel is projected to hit the 1 million subscriber milestone shortly, and the synergy between their two audiences creates a content loop that is bulletproof. While Matt handles the high-octane, high-risk main event builds, Hannah is carving out a niche in luster and logic, focusing on the aesthetic restoration and the intricate, clean engineering that Matt's Just Send It style often overlooks. Their future is a shared screen where the student is no longer an apprentice, but a co-CEO of a multi-channel network. Expansion is also moving beyond the borders of the UK, with the success of the Miami Bugatti build and his growing relationships with US-based creators like Tavarish and Ed Bolian from VinWiki. A permanent Armstrong USA hub seems inevitable. The American salvage market is a goldmine of flooded supercars and parts-only exotics that aren't subject to the same strict Category S/N restrictions found in the UK. By establishing a base in Florida or California, Matt can tap into a global supply chain of wrecks, essentially becoming a transatlantic rescue service for the world's most expensive metal. However, the most profound part of Matt's future legacy might be his role as a disruptor. As he continues to fight the right to repair battle, he is inadvertently becoming the face of a movement. The future of his career likely involves a more political or advocacy-based role, perhaps even launching a dedicated platform or software suite that helps independent mechanics bypass the digital locks of major manufacturers. He isn't just fixing cars anymore. He's fixing a broken system of ownership. Armstrong's career won't be defined by the cars he sold or the views he racked up. It will be defined by the fact that he took the impossible and made it a Tuesday afternoon project. Whether he's being shut down by Hannah's superior engineering or by a Ferrari legal threat, Matt's future is built on the one thing that never depreciates: grit. He wasn't ready for Hannah to steal the show, but in the long run, that's exactly what will keep his empire from ever hitting the scrap heap. The king might have to share his throne, but the kingdom has never looked bigger. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for the next Matt and Hannah conversation. Thanks for watching.